Today we'll be talking about Clone Stamp and the Healing Brush tool in Photoshop. The Healing Brush tool is kind of an automated way to do what you can do with Clone Stamp as well. I prefer Clone Stamp because it gives you the control to do exactly what you want it to do, as opposed to Healing Brush kind of just doing what Photoshop wants to do. This is one thing where the version of Photoshop you have is really going to matter. The more advanced versions of the Healing Brush tool, which are these guys right in here, these can do some very interesting things with some of the newer versions of Photoshop. But for today, we're mainly going to be using the Clone Stamp tool, just because it gives you most control. It gives you your own ability to work on these things. Anytime you use an automated tool, yes, it's fast, yes, it's nice, but you give up control. So that's kind of a trade that you have to make. First thing I'm going to do with this image, I've just found this nice outside image because it gives me lots of things to work on. I'm going to take my background, and to make a new layer, right, this is our original. I don't want to work on the original. Make a new layer. I'm going to work on my background copy. I'm not going to worry about naming these just because we're not really going to have that many. All right, let's see something that I might want to take out of this image. Let's do something small to start with. Let's just say that I do not like this little white spot. I don't know what that is. I assume it's just a different kind of flower, but I don't like it. Remember, spacebar gets you your hand and you can move around. Now, the Healing Brush tool, let me just show you. We use the Spot Healing Brush tool, that top one. Gives you a paintbrush shape, which you can change size and hardness. Hardness is how much fall off there is on the edges. If you set the hardness to 100, that makes a solid black line. If you make it to anything less than that, you're going to get a little bit of fade on the edges. I'm going to leave mine alone because it seems to be just about the right size for what I want to do. I'm just going to take out, let's say, these three parts right here. Now, what we're going to do is simply just paint the area we don't really like. I don't really like all that stuff. And then when I let go, it will automatically fill that in from around there. But now see, this section right here looks a little off. This looks a little strange to me. It pulled this area in and copied it to there, which is fine. If we only do this once, it's probably not going to be super noticeable. But if we do this a bunch, we will start to notice these copies happening. Could do the same thing over here. Same thing, we're going to get copies here and here, which is okay because we don't really notice, but you're going to eventually start noticing those duplicates. So do be cautious in using the Healing Brush tool. On something like human skin that has less patterning, it's a really great tool. But things like leaves, where we do have a lot of patterning, it can copy from areas that are very close by, and that makes it very difficult to use. See, that worked very well, but it's just not a tool that's really very reliable. When you switch to larger areas especially, it will do a very poor job. Let me go ahead and do that. So let's say I just don't want this bridge. Let's take out the bridge. Did a pretty good job. Of course, as soon as I say it's not going to do a good job, it does a good job. Pretty much the only issue are this bottom edge here. You can see this sharp line. And then this plant copies for some reason into the center area, and that looks a little peculiar for such a particular plant. But it did a fine job. Let's see. Yeah, we're getting that duplicate there. But other than that, we're getting a copy from down here to up here. So you can see that it just kind of tries to figure out what should be in that space. Command Option Z steps me back. I'm going to hit that twice more to get rid of the stuff we did over there. Alright, so now we're going to do it by hand. And again, if you can get the healing brush tool to do what you need it to do, awesome. It's just that sometimes you can't, so you need to know how to go back and use a more traditional tool like Clone Stamp. Clone Stamp is just going to be a not automatic way of the same thing. It's going to take content from around the screen and it's going to put it into a new place. So the way we tell it to do this, one, I am going to get a soft edge brush just because I kind of like a relatively soft edge brush. I'm going to make my size a little bit bigger. Looks about right. So what I'm going to do is try to get rid of this concrete over here. Might not be able to do that. It's kind of a big area, but we are going to try. So let's see. What can I use to cover up this space that isn't automatic? Oop. So anything near here I think we're going to see copies of, and it's not going to look quite right. I wonder if this is too dark, but we're going to try it. So the way we tell Photoshop, if I just start painting, does this. Could not clone stamp. We've not, blah, blah, blah. Could not send the area that has not been defined. Option click to define a source point. So we hold Option, and then our cursor turns into a target. Click once. Now, everywhere I hover over is a copy of that little bit of grass over there. So what I'm going to do is just start painting in some of that grass. And now when I get down towards the bottom here, you can see that that's a different texture, so I don't really like that. So I'm going to get maybe a little bit of the grass from right here, and I'm going to put that back. That's still just a little bit dark. So I'm going to find some more light. Let's get some of these flowers. Paint those in like that. Now that looks pretty good. I'd have to look closely to notice that that flower and that flower are the same, and I could go in and copy something else in there if I really wanted to. Now the issue is we have to do this part back here. One thing that I would really suggest is I've done this kind of wrong. I've started in the front and worked my way back. You should really start in the back and work your way front. That way when you lay new things in, you're laying them on top of the older things. I'm sorry, not the older things. You're laying them on top of the further away things. That just makes life a little easier. I'm going to zoom in. So I have this like very leafy plant right here. Let's see, do we have another one of those somewhere in our image? That guy kind of looks like this guy right here. So I'm going to come get some of this. That looks pretty good to me. Now I've cut off the edge of this tree, which I don't like. And I may actually have to make a copy to get it back. But let's see if I can just steal another little part of this tree. I'm going to see if I can pull this chunk up here down and see if that works. Grab just this little corner, and then I can just hover over. I don't even need to click. Right? Let's just see. That looks good, but it might be noticeable that it's the same piece, but we're going to try. That looks pretty good to me. Now I'm going to copy some other things in just to, you know, fake it a little better. Make my brush smaller. Alright, now let's get, looks like some more of this. Leafy greens. And then I'm going to really change the overall shape of that branch, just so it does not match the one above it. See that I've copied in leaves that really just changed this shape into just something else. Now this shape looks different and gives me a different feel for that edge of that plant. Now when we zoom out, we can see that that looks pretty good. There's a few issues. It's not, shadows and highlights aren't quite right, but they're close enough that if you weren't looking closely, you wouldn't notice. The only thing I'm going to do is I did trim the top edges of these off, and you can kind of see that fade right there. So I'm going to go find an area that has nice tippy tops of those plants. I'm gonna try just this edge right here. Yeah, that looks pretty sharp. Get a few more. Maybe that one right there. Bring in that tip. Gives me a nice continuation down that edge. Now that falls off really cleanly, and I don't have to, it doesn't look like there's a step cut right there. One nice thing about making these two copies is that now I can just turn this one off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, and I can see what I've done with the image. I can see the change that I've made. Let's find something else we want to take out. Let's just say I just don't want this house anymore. No house. Do not want. Now what I need to do is find something that can meet up with the sky. Right? Can meet up really nicely with this sky. But also is far enough away that I'm not going to notice it. So what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to take the top edge of this plant, but I think I'm going to split it up. So what I'm going to do is get a slightly bigger brush. That'll probably be good. Again, option, selects our source. I'm going to get pretty close to over here. Now I'm going to lay in this. I'm actually going to lay this in a little bit low. A little less work for me to do. I'm just going to put in the whole left side of that plant. And I'm going to work my way down. I'm going to leave that edge because I really don't want to mess up the edge that's already there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find another chunk of plant. Same idea. We want the top edge of something. We want it to be far enough away that we don't really notice that we're, stealing. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to actually pull a closer spot. Let's get that spot right there. And we can get in real tight. You can see with this soft edge brush, I'm not going to be able to get really clean top edges unless those edges are already against a white surface. So I wouldn't want to do this because then it just looks weird against the top. I don't get that clean, sharp top edge. But I might actually be able to use this same bush to kind of just give me a little bit of interest in here. Hide some of that. Let's see, where else do we need to work? Let's see if I can find the right edge of something to fill that spot. That'll do, right there. Option, grab some of that. Get that nice little bit of cleanness. Just really fixes that. I have this here. Now this is going to be troublesome because I have a plant in the foreground and I have this chimney in the back, and I'm going to need to get rid of that. And I don't have a copy of that plant anywhere here, so I'm just going to kind of have to make it up. Let's actually see if this guy works. And if it doesn't, you can just step back. Step back in Photoshop is Command-Option-Z, not just Command-Z. It's kind of annoying, but you'll get used to it. Let's see. Well, that looks pretty alright. There's a little bit of glow on the top there, and we can fix that. Let me find... We can just grab this again. Let's grab that. Get rid of that glow. There we go. That looks pretty nice. And then now the nice thing here is that this is just the sky above here. So we can option sky. and then just kind of copy in some of that sky. You can zoom out, make sure it looks good. Yep. This is a little noticeable with these two leaves like this and these two leaves like this. So I might actually want to knock the top of this out with some more sky. Go ahead and do that. Yeah, I don't really have much else to pull from. That's a problem with skylines that have bunches of different trees. That's going to make that top edge a little fuzzy, but that's okay compared to having that really aggressive, you know, double shape that this thing is. Alright, so now that tree is gone. Let's look and see. Look at that. So this is a nice way, especially if you go on vacation, you take photographs of like some nice landmark and somebody's walking through your one picture that you took. There are actually very clever ways to take people out of pictures if you have a tripod and enough time, but to take one person out of a picture, this way works just fine. Alright, I don't really see anything else that offends me. We could do the same thing and pull out this bridge if we wanted to, but I think this really kind of shows you the basics of finding things to take from, putting them in new places, figuring out how to make that work. And it really is just simple. It is just an edit. And on different surfaces, you're going to have different abilities to do that thing. Things with lots of texture, you need to be very cautious about just not repeating textures. If you repeat textures, it gets obvious and it looks weird and it is not delightful. So that is something to be very, very cautious about.